Okay, so a few days ago, I commented on a Facebook post, or rather, I posted up an image of a Facebook post from somebody that I know who lives in North Dublin, and I got a couple of National Party leaflets through their letterbox, and they weren't impressed, to put it mildly. And the lady in question, she's not some sort of shrieking, easily triggered SJW type. Not at all. I would see her as a fairly typical, straight talking dub woman in her late 40s, from what I'm aware. Now, that to me is a fairly typical person that you will come across in your average daily life in suburban Dublin, say. That's an Irish woman, a fairly, normal person, a decent person. I know her, she's a friend of the family, and someone who you can generally talk to about issues. I mean, you could talk to her about, say, climate change. You could even talk to her about immigration, and she will listen to you. She won't shut you down. She will consider your point. She might not agree with you, but she will be open to at least listening to the points you make. And, people like myself and most people listening to this, we would have doubts about certain aspects, certain arguments within the whole climate change narrative, within the mass immigration narrative, and so forth, and many other related topics. But the point I'm coming to is, if we can't appeal to the average man or woman on the street, and I'm not talking about the 1 or 2% who are already somewhat sympathetic to us, but if we can't appeal to the reasonable centre, if you like, the reasonable person out there who's not particularly ideologically inclined, left or right, if you like, insofar as those labels mean anything these days, and that's like 25, 30, maybe even 35% of the country. If we can't appeal to them in the first place, we have no possibility of, getting any kind of foothold of power in the first place, and then setting in motion any kind of pro-Ireland policies as well. Okay, ones that are not internationalist or globalist in scope, but that actually put Ireland first. And that's not to say it's Ireland and Irish people above everyone else and nobody else matters. Of course not. It's just that you have a sense of sovereignty, in the sense that in Ireland, Ireland's needs and the needs of the people of Ireland should of course be paramount. Of course, this should be a given. But in the age of internationalism, in the age of the EU and the UN, and all of these big global institutions, that basic common sense idea has been relegated to the sidelines. And I think this is our job, to try and bring that, this normal, reasonable position back to the fore, and that shouldn't be impossible. But the thing is, in order to be able to get to that point, you first need to appeal to people about what they care about. And unfortunately, what they care about is not, for the most part, demographics. It's not stuff like abortion and, relentless 24/7 LGBT propaganda and so on. It's stuff like housing. It's stuff like healthcare and hospital waiting lists. It's stuff like, rents and the cost of rent, the cost of living, the cost of insurance, the cost of petrol and diesel and so on. To a certain extent, they care about things like crime, but even that's a relatively minor issue in the greater scheme of things. Housing, health, education, facilities, infrastructure. Will I be able to get a school place or a creche place for my kid? Will my child be able to afford their rent? Has my child got any future in terms of perhaps owning their own place? These are relevant questions, and these are ones that we can address. And, the overtly ethnic position that the parties roughly on our side take at times, whether that be the National Party or Irish Freedom Party or Gemma's crowd, ACI. You know, they're not going to get any traction with the average person. Beyond that 1 or 2% that already agree with us, nobody else is going to come on board with us if we're pushing this hard ethnic question. Forget it. They are running a mile from that, because this is seen as socially unacceptable. It's seen as very distasteful. It's seen as crass. The average person on the street, okay, whether that be Irish or foreign, they don't care about this stuff. In fact, they find it, like I said, distasteful. They will run away from it, and they will overcompensate in the other direction, so as to show others, that they're tolerant, in inverted commas. And they will do that even more so if we push forward the ethnic message in their face. And that's why those leaflets, in my opinion, are such a disaster. You know, I'm not faulting people, the thinking behind it in terms of a moral position. I totally get it. Of course, in Ireland, Irish people should have the main say over what happens. We should have the demographic superiority position. You know, we should have, our culture, our traditions, our language, all of this stuff should be central and should be the mainstay of Ireland. Of course, in a sensible, common sense Ireland, that would be what would happen. But we're not at that place at the moment. And until we are, we simply cannot push forward that ethnic message in people's faces. They're just going to reject it. And like I said, they're going to go ever more so in the other direction, which is going to hurt us and going to prevent any chance of people like us getting to any position of power and being able to forge a better future for Ireland, and one which doesn't reject and throw out the concerns of Irish people. So that's what I'm getting at here. We have to address the issues that people actually care about, that people really care about, instead of the ones that they only marginally care about, which are the ones that we tend to push forward. Demographics, anything to do with abortion and LGBT. People, if people do care about this stuff, they tend to care about it in the affirmative, in the sense that they will support the system position. They will support the cathedral position, if you like. They will support the position put forward by the power structure. To always swim with the majority, to always take the easy way out, the path of least resistance, which is to vote in favour of all of that stuff, So it's a non-runner for us to pursue those issues, at the moment, in my opinion. We simply have to address the bread and butter issues if we want to have any hope of getting into a position of power within the Dáil, as small parties who hopefully can be part of a coalition and can gradually, bit by bit, increase our power and influence. But you have to get to that point first of all. And to get to that point is to appeal to people about the things that they care about, first and foremost, rather than the issues that we put forth in the centre of what we care about, which, of course are important issues, but the average person doesn't think they are. So you have to deal with realities. And reality says you deal with the issues people care about. And then you work from there.